Hello and welcome to Thought Provoking Tech. I'm Zach, and this is Thought Provoking Tech Weekly. This is the very first episode of Thought Provoking Tech Weekly, so I wanted to kind of lay out some of the plans for this podcast slash show. It'll kind of start off as more of a kind of traditional podcast with both audio and visual versions. However, visual will be the focus, especially as this transitions in the future. Currently, I will not be streaming this live. However, within the next month, I do plan on getting a schedule together and hopefully start transitioning this podcast to a live stream, in addition to having the archived both in audio and on visual on YouTube. Beyond that, some topics that I will be talking about on the weekly basis will be kind of, as the name kind of suggests, thought-provoking tech. So topics that I'm passionate about are things like VR and AR. Definitely see both of those becoming more and more impactful as time passes, especially AR kind of in the business world in general. For engineers, designers, I definitely see AR being massive. And for entertainment, I definitely see VR being pretty massive too. They do have crossovers between entertainment and business between the two, but I definitely see AR having a huge impact more on the business world, and VR having a massive impact on entertainment. Beyond that, I am passionate about cloud computing. I cover that. On my YouTube channel, I have several videos recently about LiquidSky's cloud computing platform, focusing on gaming. It's pretty cool. If you're interested, check some of those videos out. And beyond that, I have interest in robotics, self-driving cars, AI, technology like that, space in general. I will have some space topics in this podcast, but I might be splitting that into a kind of a separate little short podcast too, with a focus on not only what's going on in the world of space, such as NASA and SpaceX, but kind of what's going on in media. National Geographic has a great docudrama series about Mars and our travel to Mars, which kind of has some footage about our real journey to Mars, as well as kind of a drama series built in, kind of, it jumps between the two, about a expedition to Mars. So it's pretty cool, definitely entertaining, and beyond just kind of the more somewhat docudrama and halfway realistic shows, what else is going on in the media of world of space? So kind of just a conglomerate of everything space. So another thing I'm interested in is Star Citizen, which is a big first-person universe space game that's coming out. And beyond that, there's several movies and TV shows that are focused heavily on space, such as The Expanse. So I might be splitting it off into its own, but for now, it's kind of going to be integrated into the Thought Provoking Tech Weekly podcast. So that's kind of what you can expect from this podcast. If you're interested, make sure to subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're listening, or on YouTube if you're watching on YouTube. So I definitely thank everybody that does subscribe. I greatly appreciate that. And let's go ahead and jump to the intro. All right, guys and girls, let's go ahead and jump to our first topic today. So the first topic I wanted to go over was a couple things from LiquidSky's AMA that they had earlier today. Recorded this late Friday night. It'll probably be uploaded Saturday and possibly Sunday as I kind of expand to the different podcasting platforms. Seeing as this is the first episode, it'll probably be a slow rollout as I learn the different platforms and how to upload and create accounts for everything. So I hope you find this and enjoy it. So LiquidSky, for a little bit of a background for those who are completely new and haven't watched any of the videos I've done and haven't really heard of LiquidSky before. LiquidSky is a cloud computing platform, kind of similar to Amazon's EC2, a service where essentially you game or you run a remote computer that you have complete control over. It's an open platform and it runs on Windows Server 2012. They have a massive update coming at the end of February / the beginning of March. They officially are saying the first week of March. However, they are shooting for the end of February if possible. That'll be running on Windows Server 2016. And essentially to us end users, it'll essentially be like running on Windows 10. So definitely something I'm looking forward to and hoping to see how it shapes up. There's some very cool things coming in the future. If you're interested, I did a video kind of on a recap of the CES keynote that they did. There's a lot of cool details in there. My favorite thing personally is beyond the Windows 10 and being able to be on a more modern platform will be access to the Windows Store, which is I know a lot of people don't like it, but it's shaping up to be pretty cool. They're having a lot of games and stuff to it. For example, Halo Wars 2 is something I'm personally interested in. And definitely love that LiquidSky is getting support for that. I use LiquidSky a lot for non-gaming purposes, which I'll get to here in a second. But the thing I'm really interested in is USB pass-through. They're increasing support from beyond just like controllers and input devices to pretty much full USB pass-through for all kinds of devices. They even have an icon for a printer, but external hard drives, USB drives, things like your webcam. So this could enable people with low bandwidth, for example me, to stream something online with a very low limited bandwidth. Your webcam bandwidth, you could transmit that at 480p, because a lot of people that stream, for example, the stream that I'm doing, have a relatively small webcam compared to the overall footage. So if you're recording in 1080p, but you just have a little bitty webcam overlay, and if you stream that up to the LiquidSky client at a 480p resolution, that's going to still look nice and crisp and clear, because it's not a full screen recording that you're showing, or a stream that you're showing. So that's going to be pretty cool. People could stream in 1080p and stream straight to Twitch or YouTube gaming straight from the LiquidSky server. So those are some pretty cool things that are coming in the near future. One option or one question that from the AMA that was really important that I saw was about the elite option. So there's going to be 3 tiers of computers on the LiquidSky platform, and those are at 2, 4, and 8 gigabytes of VRAM for the platforms in general. There's more details. I kind of go over that in the keynote speech. I definitely recommend going over that recap if you're interested in LiquidSky more. I don't want to draw that whole section because there are several topics on LiquidSky today, and I want to draw that out into this entire podcast. So the highest of them is the elite category, and that is we didn't really have any details other than the VRAM usage. However, Ian said that it'll be comparable to a GTX 1080 Ti, and it'll be running on the Tesla GPU platform. So that's pretty impressive. They are partners with NVIDIA, so I'm sure that's not a typo, and it actually meant the GTX 1080 Ti, which is something that NVIDIA hasn't even really released yet or revealed a lot of details about, other than some leaks and speculation. They're suspected to release it at CES, but they did not. Probably because of lack of competition from AMD, and they're probably holding back on that till AMD releases something somewhat comparable, and then they'll just drop it at that point in time, is what I personally believe. However, if that's pretty impressive if it can do that, and it should allow you to pretty much stream pretty much any game, I would suspect, at 1080p and 60 FPS with no problem at all. A lot of people are pushing, the GTX 1080s, just the plain variants, on 4K and 60 FPS, and there's some games that can't do that if you crank everything up. But at 1080p, which is the highest that LiquidSky currently supports, it'll be a cakewalk. So very cool. Definitely great hardware, massive improvements. The GPU is pretty much the thing that was holding the current generation hardware back. Not only was it only running on 1 and 2 gigabyte for the 2 plans that they currently had with VRAM, that the GPUs themselves were pretty weak. I don't remember the exact hardware that they were comparable to, but I believe it was something in like the 700 series of NVIDIA cards, if I'm not wrong. So these are definitely a massive leap forward for LiquidSky, and definitely should deliver a lot better experience for all the users. All right, so the next topic I wanted to cover is this question, which is a multi-part question. I wanted to start with question number 5, which is pretty important. They're officially targeting March 1st through 7th for the release of the next LiquidSky client. Beyond that, they have mentioned elsewhere that they're hoping to release it at the end of February, but the official target is the first week of March. So if you're interested, definitely stay tuned for that. Now, the first question that this person asked is pretty cool too, They asked about VR support. Ian replies back, someday, but not in the near future. That would be pretty cool. However, there is a lot of work required to do on the latency issue because people recommend 90 to 120 FPS to have a nice fluid interaction that doesn't really cause sickness from having that disjunction of where your body is and your hands are compared to the real world and the virtual world. I haven't really had a chance to play with the dedicated PC-based hardware. I've primarily only experimented with the mobile hardware, but I do hope to get my hands on some of the actual PC-based hardware sometime in the near future to try that out, because it's definitely something that's pretty cool and something that I want to wrap my head around more and start experimenting with. I do dabble in Unity, and it'd be cool to start developing something just as fun for the VR headsets. So it's cool that they're at least thinking about it, and then it might be something in the future once latency is addressed more. Something to keep in mind is that they're pretty much already getting this down to about 30 FPS or 30 millisecond ping. 30 to 40 is if you have a good connection to the server farms, and there are server already, and they're planning on greatly expanding those in the near future. So they've done massive leaps to get that latency down drastically. And for normal gaming, I had no problems at all. I even played Overwatch, and I had no issues other than the fact that the graphics card or the auto settings that they had sometimes caused graphical glitches that would pause it for a second or kind of glitch out for a second, which is a bad deal, especially in fast-paced games like Overwatch. But when those issues were not being brought up, which didn't always happen all the time, but it happened frequently enough that I didn't want to really play Overwatch in the cloud. But it was pretty cool because it enabled gameplay in the cloud at a fast pace without any issues other than that issue that I mentioned with the glitches and the kind of the pauses, the hitches, I guess, is the better way to describe that. So those are supposed to be fixed in the new client, and it'll definitely be something that I'm definitely interested in trying out to see if that is actually the case. The next topic I want to cover was someone asked about Linux VM support. And Ian replied back that they're actually hoping to have Android as well as Linux Sky computers coming this year. Androids they do plan on having this year, and they hope to bring Linux back too on top of that. So that was a pretty interesting reply. Android devices themselves are getting pretty powerful, even for the medium quality or the medium tier of devices. So it'll be interesting to see what people start doing with the Android part of it and see how useful that actually is. But the Linux part is definitely pretty cool too. Give you a little more choice since it is an open platform and not tied down where like PlayStation Now and the GeForce Now are both kind of not open platforms that don't let you do pretty much whatever you want to a degree. LiquidSky is against using torrents and things along those lines. So it's not completely open. You can't do everything you want to do, but it is definitely way more open than the other gaming options out there on the market. And the final question and answer from the AMA that I wanted to go over is about the people currently using the beta. People currently using the beta, their current Sky computers will be deleted. So that's just something to keep in mind. If you do have data on there, definitely hook your Dropbox or your OneDrive account or whatever you have. I'm sure you have it. Pretty much everybody has some type of a account to store their documents into the cloud nowadays. Even if you have a personal option. Personally, I use my Synology NAS, and they have a app, which I actually might make a video on, that essentially functions just like Dropbox, and it's kind of like a private cloud. So you have a little bit more control over your data than you would with a Dropbox or a OneDrive option. I do use OneDrive too, but I have my private cloud, which gives me a ton of storage for essentially no monthly cost other than the bandwidth that it consumes. So that's just something to keep in mind because there will be upgrading from the Windows 2012 to 2016 just to back up your data because those computers will be deleted. And the final LiquidSky thing that I wanted to go over was a LiquidSky beta giveaway. I will try to post links to this. There's a share link that they give you to get extra entries. I have went ahead and signed up for this, and then I'm already using it, and I actually already have 2 accounts, one for work and one for personal use. So if I get a key, I will be giving it out on this podcast in the future. But I will try to get a link in the podcast descriptions. I'm not sure exactly how all those work right now, and if you can kind of do descriptions like you can on YouTube on a video by video or a episode by episode basis, I'm sure you can. So check the description there, and on YouTube I definitely will have a link to this giveaway. And this will be the last chance to have access to the beta key until they're thinking about towards the end of March after they launch. People that are currently beta users will get access at the end of February/March when they officially launch the new version. But they do plan on reopening invites to the beta about the end of March after people have gotten that already have beta access have made their accounts and started kind of got that wave of people taken care of. Now on to a little bit of space news. So SpaceX makes a triumphant return to flight, but hard work is just the beginning. So I'm sure if you're interested in space, you watched or at least read some articles about SpaceX return to space with the Iridium satellites. They actually released or launched 10 satellites for Iridium, which I did a little bit of work research into them, and they seem to be doing work with satellite communications, but it's not really along the lines of SpaceX's satellite communications that they're wanting to deliver high-speed bandwidth. It seems more like cellular phones and kind of more traditional satellite communications. The new satellites might be possible of higher bandwidth. I'm not really sure, but the service itself is kind of more of a traditional satellite communications company. However, it was a successful launch and as well as the first landing on a drone ship in the Pacific Ocean this time. So a success all the way across the board, both the launch, deployment of satellites, and the landing of the first stage. So it's great to see SpaceX back and in action and to get ready to forge ahead with their future after that devastating fast fire, as Elon calls it. It's not an explosion, it's a fast fire. In another space news, CBS gives go for Mission Control TV pilot from author of The Martian. So Andy Weir, the guy who wrote The Martian, is going to be kind of leading a new show about the next generation of NASA astronauts. There's not a lot of details on the new show, what it'll feature, if it'll feature current astronauts. The kind of description that was released that I read said something about the next generation of astronauts. And here's a little bit different description than I've read before. It's called Mission Control, and it's a drama set at NASA, he described. The main characters are flight controllers at Mission Control Center for Houston, and the astronauts aboard the space station that they take care of. So it actually sounds like it's actually the current generation of astronauts aboard the ISS, and will be pretty cool. They're about to begin casting it and have an impressive group of behind-the-camera people already involved. So it definitely sounds like it might be interesting. It seems like it might be like another thing like National Geographic's Mars, a kind of a docudrama type thing maybe. So that's definitely cool. It's definitely like cool seeing those kind of mixes between drama and documentaries that kind of give you a look both in the real life look, but also including a little bit of drama to spice it up and bring open it to a wider audience, because space is definitely becoming something that's going to be a bigger and bigger focus for our world, as both SpaceX, Blue Origin, as well as the traditional companies kind of start reaching for the stars, as it is to say. Space exploration is definitely going to be a big thing as we go forward. SpaceX is doing great things. They're kind of a little more allowed with their kind of actions than like Blue Origin is. But both of those companies are two companies that I really have a key following of. I definitely like what they're doing, as well as the other companies too, and of course NASA. So there's definitely going to be very cool things in the near future with possible trips to Mars with humans. It's definitely great to continue to expand our reach as humans into space. There's a lot of people alive, a lot of people probably watching and listening to this video or this podcast that were not even alive when humans last stepped foot on the moon. So it's definitely something that we need to get back to. Our curiosity is something that really drives us as the human race. So it's definitely cool to see that drive kind of being reinvigorated, and with SpaceX and NASA both kind of pushing the way to get to Mars as well as the moon itself. Both are going to be important footsteps to kind of establish bases on and research outposts to better not only better understand our solar system, but as well as our entire universe as a whole, and as well as establishing possibly colonies that if there's ever a catastrophic event at one location, we as a human race can continue, at least in the near future. So definitely very cool stuff that we'll be doing as a human race in space in the next 10 or 15 years. All right, and the final space-centered topic I want to talk about today is SpaceX's secret weapon, as Fortune is calling it. A week or so ago, SpaceX announced that they wanted to launch about 4,425 satellites above the Earth, making a massive network of high-speed internet communications that will be able to service not only as a backbone, but potentially to end users to get access to internet where the internet currently is lacking. So essentially, that number is about 3 times what's currently orbiting the Earth. So just let that sink in a moment. SpaceX wants to deploy 4,425 satellites, which is 3 times what's currently already orbiting our Earth. That's pretty massive when you think about it. And it could definitely be a secret weapon for them and propel them with enough funds and capital to push forward with their other major plans, such as visiting Mars and possibly even beyond. And not only for SpaceX, but it could definitely be a massive tool for us as a human race in general. There's a lot of people, I personally am in a rural area where I have a 10 megabit downstream and a half to 1 upstream. It kind of varies a little. But it's pretty horrible, especially for uploading content at all and downloading, if you're streaming a video at all, don't expect to be doing too much else on the network. So having access across the world, both in rural communities, remote communities, where people are more widespread, such as the farther reaches of Canada and other places where people aren't in, communities where running a wire from house to house is really something that's feasible. As well as in doing kind of what Facebook was talking about doing with launching satellites to cover Africa. So you can have the developing nations have access to this global communications network. And they're talking about speeds up to a gigabit. Now, whether the end users could have access to the speeds of that high, but even have access to like a 50 up and 50 down plan, that's massive and is leaps and bounds over what many people already have. And if they succeed in this, and I think they're only planning on having this, they're doing it within a fairly short period of time. Don't really see that real quickly, but I think it was only about 3 to 4 years that they wanted to deploy all these in once they actually start deploying them. And that's pretty massive. If they did that, that could be a massive revenue stream for them, as well as giving people access to internet, which I definitely think could spur a new era of innovation for us as a human race. There's so much information and content available on the internet, not only as entertainment, but also as learning resources. Personally, I've probably learned more on the internet, watching YouTube videos from makers and scientists and guys like that, and reading different articles on the internet, than I have probably in kind of the more formal institutions, just because there's so much content on the internet that people make freely available. There's tons of people that are doing YouTube projects, and they have blogs that share so much information that you could really get to different, completely different learning paths, and people, if people are kind of have diverse interests, you can split your interests up and learn different aspects from different people, and really absorb a ton of content, and that kind of can spur creative ideas of your own, that you kind of, I've learned how to do this, and I can now transform that knowledge into this. So having that vast knowledge base accessible all the way across the planet, with pretty much everybody having access to it, will be massive. We're already starting to see that with kind of slower speed stuff, but with Word articles, that's something that's easier. But as people start getting even access to videos, people that are more visual will be able to start tapping into that massive knowledge base and doing projects on their own, and start becoming makers and creators. There's a growing maker movement of people that are kind of getting interested in doing projects and stuff along those lines. So it's definitely cool what this could do for even us as a human race, but as SpaceX specifically, that kind of could propel them to their goals. So that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Fortune had a decent article on that, which will be linked in the show description. And this is an article kind of bridging space, but focusing on 3D printing. So it really shows where 3D printing is going to be massive in the future. Being able to print anything that you can think of, and have it printed out in a couple hours, or for larger projects in a day even, is going to be massive. Whatever you can think of, you'll be able to print in the future. Now, there's certain things that right now that you could design that are impossible to print with standard filament-based printers, but SLA printers are kind of bridging the gap and making things that are even more complex, more detailed, that would be harder to print with a traditional filament-based printer, possible. And technologies will continue to advance. And I just saw this as a kind of an example of a perfect use case. In space, you can't bring everything, especially as we start deploying colonies and outposts on the moon and Mars. You're not going to be able to bring 10 wrenches and every different type of possible socket you might need, replacement parts for everything. But if you could just bring a whole bunch of raw materials, or even get those raw materials from the source that you're at, and create what you need on the fly, that greatly reduces the weight that has had to be lifted from our planet through our heavy gravity field into space and to the destination. If you could bring just the raw materials and make what you need as you need it, that's going to be massive for us as deploying our future colonies and outposts in the next 10 to 15 years. One instance that they're talking about right now is hand injuries are, I guess, very common in astronauts. So what they built here, or what they made here, was I guess a splint for a jammed finger, I guess, and they allowed that to do that in space, and have it custom created for that person's contour of their finger, and it perfectly fit their use case and what they needed. And this made it so all kinds of things could happen. I guess theoretically, you could even break your arm or something. And if you had to make a splint that kind of a cast out of 3D printing, I saw one of those before. There's a little bit more to it than just printing a cast that fits your arm. But in an emergency, you're not going to be able to transport all that stuff to the space station. But if you could design something that could get you by until you get back to Earth, it's going to be massive. So we're definitely going to see 3D printing continue to grow. There was a lot of development in 3D and filament-based 3D printers, and that seems to be kind of having slowed down a little. But I definitely see that the future of 3D printing will continue to pick up. It's definitely used very heavily in the maker in market, but it hasn't reached a point where it's in everybody's house. But I definitely see in the future, and not the far future, somewhat in the near future, we'll have 3D printers in houses. I definitely do believe that. It will be a slower rollout. But once we reach a point where it's essentially press a button and it's done, and we're definitely not there yet. There's, you have calibration, even with the better printers. One printer I personally love is a FlashForge Creator Pro, which I barely have to calibrate at all. But there is still some technical knowledge, and the filament-based systems that we currently have now aren't the best. But we're definitely getting to a point where 3D printing is going to be used in our daily lives, and younger generation is getting used to creating in 3D, which will just get us used to using these 3D tools in our daily lives. So just a great example of how useful 3D printing is in space, specifically for medical uses. So one final topic I wanted to cover in this podcast is Chicago's Automate 2017. So the author of this article is calling it the most important electronics show of 2017. So they go on to mention CES, and while CES is awesome, has a lot of cool products for the future, automation and robotics, as well as AI, that it doesn't really cover AI in this article, but I want to include AI in this discussion too. But they're definitely becoming more and more prevalent in our world as they kind of become more innovative and able to do expanded tasks. We're seeing them being used in a wider, and as the cost of robotics and automation goes down, we're seeing that they're becoming more widespread in our manufacturing plants. So it's definitely a massive thing if you're into the manufacturing industry at all. And AI kind of branches outside of the manufacturing industry to a lot of different industries. But in general, if you're in the manufacturing industry, automate definitely seems like a very key thing, because it's going to show you kind of where the technology is now and the inside of where the technology might be in 1, 2, or even 5 years from now. It's really going to be hard to kind of project beyond that, because the way that technology is progressing, it's really hard to kind of analyze where they might be in the future. As AI kind of enhances and grows, we might see AI becoming more and more prevalent in running robotics and automation, and taking a larger role in that. I do like how they mention in one example that organizations like Ramtech in Ohio are already working to retrain manufacturing workers into robotics. And it goes on to say how Automate will continue to serve as a meeting and recruiting ground for the American workforce, robotics and humans alike. So this kind of leads into the big debate on what we will do as humans when automation and robotics become more and more widespread and our jobs are replaced by that. In the near future, robot techs and repairmen are going to be a big job opening in an expanding market. But beyond that, what will you do? A lot of people are for a universal basic income, and personally, I don't think that is the solution. That is the be all and end all of this problem that we're going to have in the future. For one, just one point that I wanted to bring up on that is a lot of people are driven to innovate because of their jobs. If they don't have that job, they don't have to work to have their money, then innovation could potentially be stifled and not expand like it is right now if they don't have that drive. Now, not everybody's drive comes from their job, but a lot of people have the drive to become better at job, to get raises, to get higher positions. So that kind of, or to branch out into their own business, and that'll be kind of the drive, that kind of be the fuel that lights the fire under their drive. So I'm not sure if universal basic income is the solution. And as we kind of branch out into space, I think space travel will be, and space exploration in general, will be a ever increasing field for people. It's definitely going to be an interesting future, and Automate 2017 is definitely going to be something that kind of gives you a look into that future, at least in the near future, of what is already out in the market and maybe some things that are on the verge of being released. So that's pretty much wraps for the very first episode of Thought Provoking Tech Weekly. I hope you found something interesting or intriguing in this episode. And I hope that you like it enough to subscribe on whichever platform that you're watching or listening on. I greatly appreciate that, and I appreciate any feedback that you have. You can find me on thoughtprovokingtech.com, which will redirect to a main link for kind of a conglomerate of the different channels, as well as podcasts that I will be doing. You can go ahead and register there. There are some community forums. You can join there and chat about the different topics that interest you. I would love to start to grow this community, and there will be a kind of different aspects and different podcasts that I will be producing in the future. I do have some different kind of entertainment kind of focused podcasts too that I have ideas for that might not necessarily be weekly podcasts, but if you're interested in that, go ahead and join the site, and you can go ahead and make an account, and you can actually follow blogs on a blog by blog basis, so you can kind of pick and choose what you're interested in and keep up to date on that. If you want to provide any feedback, the community site is great for that, as well as hitting me up on Twitter at Provoking Tech, simply because Thought Provoking Tech is too long for Twitter. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, leave a comment in the description below. Thanks for everybody that has made it this far. I greatly appreciate your dedication. And once again, I hope you found something interesting. And until next time, Zach out.